It's
I
yeah,
like
just
that. That works for me.
cool.
Okay, so are we
Awesome.
starting?
Let's do this.
Okay.
Silence.
I'm Lou Bank,
I am Chava Peribán.
and this is Mezcal Winter Camp, week 5. Happy campers, you have graduated. Well, not yet. I mean, the theory is that you're going to make it alive through this 5th session.
If you survive this fifth session, you can get our. Do we have pins? What's our
We do.
graduation?
We've got Agave Road Trip pins. If you made it through all 5 sessions, send me a note. Send me, but it can't. You know what? It can't just be an email. Emails are easy. If you a letter, send me a letter through the mail to my mailing address, which I think is on the website, right?
I'll put it on the website. I'll put
There
it
you
on
go.
the Agave Road Trip website so
Then
people
we'll
can
send
send
you
you
back a little pin. You get a little pin.
with a fingerprint signed. What's the policy on this one?
Just a letter asking. Just a letter
Asking
asking. And only in the continental United States. I'm not spending like $50 to get you this $2 pin for God's sake.
to Hawaii or Puerto Rico.
I don't know how that works
No.
actually. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
so this week we're talking about the stuff that we love. But before we do that, we're going to talk about other stuff we love. Stuff like Stuff like Just Egg. This week's installment of Mezcal Winter Camp is brought to you by Just Egg. You know, Chava, Connie
You,
came home the other day and she
uh-huh.
said to me, like she was annoyed with me. Yes, as per usual. She was annoyed with me. She said, "The house smells like eggs." You know what?
Because you
No eggs were harmed in the making of that smell. No actual eggs were harmed. The house smelled of eggs because I had cooked myself I did that taco thing I told you about, the used taco egg thing with
yeah,
just egg.
basically what we call in Mexico a recalentado. Like, do you have a concept of that in the United States?
No.
When you didn't finish your dinner and you cook it 3 days afterwards, you have a term to describe that?
We call that bibimbap.
No, that's Korean. That's one of
Oh,
the
I
most
always
delicious.
forget. I get those two things confused all the
Oh,
time.
yeah. Okay, shut up.
Okay,
Just
so
egg. Just
so I
egg is
had just
awesome.
egg. I had just egg, and my cholesterol has dropped in half, and I've lost 25 pounds, and I'm a vegan, and life is good. It's the whole thing, and it's in due in large part to just egg.
This is I feel touched, happy, and ready to start.
Okay, and Chef Jose Andres calls Just Egg mind blowing, and Bon Appetit says it's so good. I feel guilty eating it. Chava, if you own a restaurant and you want to bring more plant based consumers, I guess they're not really plant based consumers. That would be like some kind of pod thing. If you want to bring in more consumers who consume things that are plant based, hey, try Just Egg. You can get started with a free sample. Just head to ju.st/HRN. That's ju.st/HRN.
Woo! Okay, lovely, awesome.
Okay, let me get my background changed.
Change
And
the background.
this episode of Agave Road Trip is also, I'm sorry, this episode of Mezcal Winter Camp is also brought to you by AgaveHolics.com, an agave apparel store from the folks behind the Mezcal Reviews website. They thought it would be fun to make some mezcal inspired clothing, and I think it's fun too. In fact, if you order their shirts at agaveholics.com, that's agaveholics.com. If we actually get the Manscaped account, I'm going to be unbearable. If you go to agaveholics.com and use the promotional code LouRocks, you get 10% off. That's Lou Rocks in all caps because that's the only way you would ever write Lou Rocks.
Okay, that's it. That's it. We're starting. Please, Lou.
Okay,
That's
yeah, we
it.
can start
Okay.
now. That's fine.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, so which spirit do they have to drink first? Does everybody have the tequilana?
Yeah, everybody has the
Yeah.
tequilana.
Okay, let's
So
start with
So
tequilana.
let's I just want to go with like an overview of what we're going to do here, right? We're going to drink 5 spirits, and the
Hmm.
spirits that you're drinking, it's described clearly in the title as spirits that we love, and I guarantee you, in fact, I think I've not had most of the spirits that you guys are going to be drinking tonight, but this is the stuff that we love. We know, like anything that comes from these producers, in particular, I'm not saying no other producers, but these producers, we always know that we can trust, and there's a reason for that. We'll get into the reason as we
Yeah,
drink,
but
right?
I think there's an important distinction here.
Okay,
It's
distinct.
not that we necessarily like it, we love it.
Love it.
And
Even when we don't like it, we
like
love
it, we
it.
love it exactly.
Oh,
So
God,
yeah,
that's so
yeah,
good.
yeah. And that's gonna make a little bit more sense once we start advancing.
Oh,
But
but to be very like the first round is just a little bit different, which is not to say we don't love it, but it's like it's a different kind of love. Right? So the first round, the first thing you're drinking is La Luna Taquilan, and I think we've talked about this in the previous episodes a little bit. Have we, Chava? Am I
a
just
little
misremembering?
bit, no, yeah, a little bit. But I think it's a great place to start because and probably I've repeated this many times to the point where maybe some authority is gonna go after me.
Hmm.
But it makes well, I don't know. You know, United States is weird in with which things you can say and which things you can't say. But I can remember that I started drinking tequila when I was anywhere between 13 and 14, and by 16 I had enough bad experiences with it that just the sole smell of Tequilana bever, the agave used to make tequila by regulation, will make me not want to drink. Even if I wanted to party, I will smell that and all these amount of memories will come haunting me. I was like, no, no, I'll just drink water. And that went on till I was probably, Jesus, like 26, 27. And I was fortunate enough to try my first non-certified tequila I've ever.
Oh,
And yeah. And and I think La Luna shares a lot of this first tequila I've ever that I drank that was not certified, in which there's definitely these smells that connect me to my reckless youth, but they are so much more informed and interesting and rounded and just appealing to the point where I can close my eyes and ignore all these memories that come.
oh,
And
that's
and
so
it's like,
beautiful.
yeah, I
It's
don't know if beautiful
poetry.
is a word.
It's Blue Weber poetry.
Maybe blue, but okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. I think that's fair. But anyway, so what is really cool about this, and you love to say this, is tequila captured the attention of the world at some point. Aren't you still? I look young. I'm not that young.
But he is still reckless, David. Thank you very much for pointing that out.
but anyway,
If he wasn't reckless, he wouldn't be doing this series with me, would he?
under no circumstances. My joke is that I rub mezcal on my face. I don't drink it. That's more effective than you know that le mer creams. Does that say
La
anything to you?
Merde, isn't that the
No,
shit?
no, no. Le mer as
Oh,
in
I guess I
sea.
don't know that. No.
It's like $1,000 cream. And I claim that mezcal is more effective than Le Mer. But anyways, that's beside the point. But I think, tequila was a global phenomenon in the 1800s. It was a spirit that captured the attention of people in world fairs and in many
At
others.
the World's Fair in
The world fair.
1893 in Chicago. 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. Keep going. You're good.
Correct. And there was certain things attached to a tequila that are not necessarily attached to the tequilas that we drink today that you can find over the counter. And why
Things
is
like
that, Lou?
aromas and flavors.
And why is that? Why are those aromas and flavors that were in that tequila in the 1800s they're not there anymore,
When the
or
world says
rarely,
give me to
or rarely there anymore?
Rarely there, yeah. When the world says give me tequila, suddenly you've got to figure out how to ramp up production and do it
Mm.
quickly. And so they industrialize the process of making the spirit, making vino de mezcal de tequila in bulk. And I get that. Like it was an economic opportunity that you could not pass up, but as a result, over the years, like it really lost the heart that brought the world's attention by and large. It lost the heart that brought the world's attention to it at the 1893 World's Fair. But here with La Luna, like literally, it's like you're getting on a train and you're going back in time. You're on a time traveling train back to the town of Tequila. And what they're doing is they're literally making this particular Blue Weber mezcal, certified mezcal, in the way that it would have been made in the 1850s.
And you know why I love this so much? I mean, you claim that you hate museums, but I probably spent most of my adult life and youth life inside museums. And there's a lot of things that I love about those places, but something that always frustrated the hell out of me is you go to the Industrial Design Museum, you go to the MoMA, you go to the Industrial Design Park, and you see furniture. You cannot use it. How the hell are you gonna know if that works? How the hell are you
Hmm.
gonna know that the touch is good, that the feeling, you're looking at something and you have to deduce all those things by just looking behind a wall of glass and with crazy lights. Beautiful thing here is you're putting this information inside your body. So it's like if a museum was coming into
It's
you.
like you're swallowing a whole museum.
Yes, exactly. And I just love that.
So the tequilana is made by it's what's his name? Iggy? I think it's Iggy. Yes, it's Iggy Perez and Sergio Cruz, who we figured out Sergio Cruz might be the only mezcataquilero in the world.
Wait,
It's,
explain that. Explain that.
yeah, of
Mezcateclero
course
is
I'm
a
gonna.
very convoluted expression.
So tequilero is a guy who makes tequila, and
Yeah,
Sergio Cruz makes tequila, right? So he makes the Grando Vejo for from Puente International, the same guys who bring in La Luna,
Dom
and he
1414. Yeah, yeah.
if yeah, and Siembra Azul and a couple other brands that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but he makes great tequila. Uh, and then he makes really amazing. He helped Iggy make this really amazing tequilana. So they take Blue Weber agave, and it's a little bit different each time. But the what you're drink. Wait, I don't know what you're drinking. I don't know which batch you guys have. I didn't pour it for you, but the most recent batch that I have was made from 75% farmed Blue Weber,
Mhm.
25% wild Blue Weber,
That's awesome.
cooked underground in a stone-lined earthen oven. This is all going to sound familiar to you mezcal fans. Cooked underground in a stone-lined earthen oven, left there for 5 days. It's then taken out and milled by hand using axes. It is then fermented, open air in wooden barrels, and distilled in wood-fired copper stills. And these are the Michoacan stills that you love so much, Java.
Yeah, which they, as a base, as the place where the must, the agave beer is boiling, it's the same shape as the how do you say it? Casos? How do you say that in English? Like
We usually
pots?
say casos. Pots. It's the same
Pots.
pots that are used to fry up carnitas.
Yes, and the tops are wood. So it's just
And they're
insane. Like
big. They're
they're
giant wooden
massive.
tops.
So what is really crazy, because I think for a lot of people that maybe haven't been inside tequila distillery and a palenque or a vinata, it doesn't seem like such a big deal, no? Like you're using basically the same material to make spirits. But if people get confused by riding a car that is automatic or chipstick, this is like the ultimate confusion for a producer. Most producers will refuse to use a technology that is not their own, and more if they come from a tequila context. Because I mean, there's a number of reasons for this, but tequila, those guys tend to mock a little bit the non-certified scene.
Some guys do.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Well, some of them even mock the certified mezcal scene, right?
they 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 with a lot more passion. They don't quite care about the uncertified stuff. They will actually just mock the mezcal area. So it's very relevant, and I find it as a I don't know. I find some hope in that, Lou. I really think that that line, as
Hmm.
easy as it seems to be crossed,
Hmm.
hasn't been crossed. I mean, this is the only guy that does this, and this is
Mescalero, and he and Sammy Hagar, they're the only ones I know.
Sammy Hagar.
It's a you wouldn't understand.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But anyways, what else can be said about this tequila? I just like I because no, for me it was really a moving experience when I encountered this, and the fact that it's made in Michoacan. I mean, I was born in Michoacan. I
You
lived
were
there
made in
when
Michoacan. This destilado was made in Michoacan.
yes, and it's not something I could ever think about. I mean, for me, my home state produces avocados, queso cotija, some crazy weird mezcales, but tequilana, that's not something that I have in my understanding of what my home state does. So it's I think this is something that is so exciting about a lot of the things we'll be talking about that are new ways of discovering places that we think we're familiar with. And this tequila is definitely just a new reminder of the crazy diversity that exists within Mexico.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay. Now I think we move on to the other four rounds where like there's a commonality amongst all of them, and it's the stuff that we love. And it's the stuff that we love because every one of these producers that have, I shouldn't say producers, every one of the brands um, that you are tasting from, they source their agave spirits from producers. They're all uncertified spirits. They're not labeled mezcal. They're all bottled in the same form in which they would be consumed in the communities where they are made. I think the largest batch amongst what everybody has here, I think the largest batch was 600 liters.
that's crazy. So, okay, but you said something really important that I think we
I never
always.
say anything important.
Now, this time you were lucky. You didn't think
Okay.
about it; just happened. Uh, and I think sometimes we just think of this to be a little bit obvious, but it's so critical in these spirits. There's this concept of gusto histórico, historical taste, right?
Hmm.
And again, I'm going to ask you something that you're going to tell me you don't care about this, but do you like classical music, Lou?
You know, it's funny. I used to hate classical music, and now I like it playing in the background when I want to not think about anything.
Exactly. So there's this new trend in classical music where it's called historically informed performances.
Hmm.
So if they're playing something from a certain era, they try for all the materials involved in the instruments to replicate what was done in that era. So the strings are made with cat stripe, and the woods are done treated in certain ways and have to come from that time. And
Hmm.
the bar, so everything has to be the closest possible to
To
get
when
this
that piece of music was actually written. Oh, that's
created.
interesting.
So you're listening to all like the closest you can to what people were listening at the 17th century, 16th century.
That,
That's insane.
that's you know what that's totally cool, but I don't know what I said that came close to being that interesting.
Well, that's what we get when we taste something that is related to this historical taste. It's the same thing. We're trying stuff that
Okay.
it's replicating a lot of the technology, the flavors, the intentions that,
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
and of course they have changed because it's
S-
easier to replicate an instrument uh, than a taste. There's
oh,
more information, but even then, they are happy to understand that what you're listening to is not exactly the same as what was happening in the 16th century. That it has shifted, but that's part of the piece. That's part of the music,
they didn't have
and
Q-tips back then, and now we do when we clear our ears out, and so it's a different sound.
your ears are like they didn't have truck drivers in the middle of Mexico City in the 16th century. I assure you, my ears do not resemble the ears of someone in the 16th century. So the same to our palates. So it's not a perfect snapshot, but I think it's again it's the museum getting into you.
Okay, so we're going to open the doors of that museum with
Woohoo!
Mal Bien. Mal
Oh yes.
Bien is this beautiful brand that's been brought into the USA by our very good friend Benjamin J. Scott. He owns a mansion and a yacht.
He
So,
wishes.
so the one brand that is not in this in this particular week that he also imports that I really love is La Locura, right?
Mhm.
And but we had Lalo's, and I like it. Just it like we only had room for five things, and we had Lalo in one of the earlier tastings, so he's not in this one. But Malbien and Lalo Cura, like everything that comes in under those brands is beautiful. So this week in particular, what our friends who have purchased their tastings from Copal have is the Malbien Tepestate,
Oh, you guys
or
are so
or
lucky.
or actually Tepextate, right?
But
Because it's from
man,
Miahuatlan, so it's Tepextate. And then at Mission Cantina, you've got the Baquiche. Now, I can tell you with absolute certainty that bequiche is made by Felipe and Ageo Cortez, and I can tell you that because Mission Cantina told me that's the one they got. I don't know if you're getting the Tepex from Copal. I don't know if it was made by the Cortezes or the Ramoses. I don't know, and that's the beauty of this. I don't know. So what's the difference? What's the
What's the difference?
difference if it was made? So let's start with what is Tepex, right?
Chepestate is agave marmorata, probably the most. Okay, tell me if this is fair to say. It's the unicorn. Well, it says
Oh,
Ramos on the
it's the
label.
Ramos on the label.
Okay,
But
there you
but
go.
but but the fact that we didn't know until you told, like, there's an important story here. So keep going. Unicorn.
Okay, yeah, well, like the marmorata is sort of the unicorn of agave. It's nobody knows for sure how long it takes to grow. There are stories about this 25, 40, 50 years, 60
Nah, hang on.
years.
You know what though? Here I'm throwing down on you because in
Uh,
fact I have been told by Manuel Ramos that it takes 12 years for the Tepextate to reach maturity in Mihuatlan. 12
which is
years.
which is very similar to the amount of time that it takes in Puebla. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of legends and stories
There,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it.
you'll hear
It
40 years. And I always wonder, like, who the hell saw that and then watched it for 40?
uh,
Nobody.
but
Nobody.
you know why it makes sense for me. Every time I behold a Marmorata, it's like beholding an Edgar Allan Poe story. It's like if you were, yeah, it's just like a haunted mansion. They are crazy looking. They're twisted. They're
Mm.
massive. They're dark. Have you ever found a marmorata at night? Oof, it's a scary. It's a scary thing to encounter.
Okay, so what the Ramoses, that would be Victor and his son Manuel, Emmanuel,
Emmanuel.
but he
Yeah, I
likes
go
to
with
be
Emmanuel.
because he likes to be called Manuel.
Okay, I
Yeah.
get it. I
For
get
some
it.
reason he's like it's sort of like you. He always writes Salvador, but he wants to be called Chava. Same thing. So what they do is they cook it in the stone-lined earthen oven. They mill it using the tahona, the big stone wheel that is pulled in their case by two oxes, and then it is fermented open air in wooden barrels and distilled in a wood-fired copper still with a refrescador.
Okay,
And and truthfully, if you hadn't ever told us, Des, that it said Ramos on the bottle, if we had been talking about the Cortez, if we'd been talking about Felipe and Ajeo, they make it the exact same way, just like 10 minutes down the road.
but with very in, subtle differences that make massive impact. I've been thinking a lot about, just to get all nerdy about something. I've been thinking about why do they use two oxes to meal? And no, 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 because when you think about milling, you are thinking about how many revolutions at what rate, how many turns in what amount of time. And it's not the same to do 25 going. So they're using a taona, which is a huge stone wheel that goes round and round and it's milling the agave. And a lot of people use horses, and horses are fast kids. They're more hyperactive, so they go faster around, and they're also a little bit more skippy. So it's a different relationship. Oxes are massive, slow, consistent things, and they use two of them.
God,
So
you know what, Chava? I mean, remember when we were on one of the trips and I started asking every mescalero the same question because I knew we'd get different answers?
how
This
about you
is one of
please?
the things we need to add to our list of questions is,
Why do you use, and
yeah,
even why do you use this horse and not that horse?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, maybe it's just
yeah.
because this is the horse that I had at the head. Why don't you use donkeys? None of them. I've never seen a donkey making this job.
This is the conversation we had before this started, isn't it? Every single time we go to visit a mescalero, it's going to be 2 days now, isn't it?
It is. It is because Luke here wants to do 4 hours with each mezcalero, and we because I've been with other people. We with Roy, our sound engineer, we always tell him that's such a gringo perspective. You're not gonna get anything interesting in 4 hours. You need to
I
know.
don't want to do it in four. I want to do it in an hour.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Crazy, crazy gringo.
Okay. So There's like two beautiful Malbiens you guys are. God, I wish you could do like an exchange. Like all you Mission Cantina people could like, like just drink half the bottle and then ship the other half up to the or down to the Copal people in the Copalite, right?
Because they can't be more different. I mean, I seriously think that a Karwinski against a Marmorata, the Quishe, it's an agave Karwinski, and
That's a good
Tepestate
point.
Sega.
It's a
I think
different,
those
and
are,
yet the bequiche is going to take about the same amount of time to reach maturity in Miwatlan. It's about a 12-year-old agave. So, it's interesting when we talk about these plants reaching maturity, right? They now have enough sugar content to reproduce. Like in theory, it kind of should be about the same sugar content because they took the same amount of time to reach maturity.
okay, okay, you're gonna get to that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but it's not.
but it's not.
They behaved almost exactly the same, but
Almost
they
exactly.
in their growing cycle, but they look like if you were comparing an apple to a banana.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
look
yeah,
like
totally.
absolutely different things. And
Yeah.
then efficiency wise, or how many liters per kilogram of agave can you get? It's also drastically different. Tepestate, and I can say that with authority. It's the less. It's the less. It's
I don't think you can.
no, I can't.
You
It's
can't. No way. And the reason I say this is, I think there is a reason, and we'll ask the Ramoses this when we finally get to go
yeah,
down
but
there next.
Tepestate tends to be.
I think there is a reason that it takes 12 years in Miawatlan and it takes longer in other places. And I don't know what that reason is, but I've been told that Tepextate used to be incredibly common in that region. And I wonder if it isn't a result of a specific kind of breeding of a specific variant of Tepextate that like it might be more efficient. This is worth asking them.
Yeah, and I think this is important to mention. There's a lot of things that are called tepestate, but could be a subspecies. It's just that nobody has gotten the grant or the money to go to this place, study their specific population, and be like, okay, yes, this is agave marmorata subspecies blah. And so we deal a lot with a lot of incomplete information, which is like I don't mind it. I don't mind it at
Actually,
all.
when you work with me, you always deal with incomplete information, Shava.
Or corrupted information.
Yeah.
It depends how you look at it.
Okay, I think we need to move on to the next round. What do you think?
I think that's his. Oh, refrescadera. Do you want to just explain the refrescadera super fast?
Yeah, sure. So it's like you've seen a column still, right? So when you're
Well,
making
but
when you
refrescadera is the specific way this spirit was distilled.
Yeah. So you've
Okay.
seen a column still. If you're making vodka, you're going to pass your ferment through that still once. But the thing is that still has 7, 10, 14 plates in it. So really, it's like you're getting 7, 10, or 14 and sometimes more, sometimes less distillations, right? Every time you've separated the alcohol, it becomes a vapor. It goes up, it cools down, it drops onto something. That's a plate. That plate heats up. It just keeps going. So you get multiple distillations
Well,
through
you
one
get
pass.
yeah, you get more separation of alcohol of water from water.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that's the reason why so many of these mescaleros who use like a pot still, a wood-fired pot still, are going to pass it through twice because the more you pass it through, the more of the water stays behind. But it can get to a point where if you pass it through 5 times, yeah, sure, you're not going to have any water, but you're not going to have any flavor either. It's going to leave the flavor behind. So in order to save time and to do something a little more efficient than most mescaleros do, they created this sort of one plate column or condenser on the top of their stills in Miwatlan and parts of Ehutla. I've seen them where it gets it's almost like a second distillation.
Yeah, it's submerged in the water, so you're just giving the vapors a harder time to go to the other side, and therefore more water gets left behind on one side and more alcohol travels to the other. But that's super interesting because I think a lot of people think that I don't know why is that. Like I'm actually always very confused about that. It got to a point where triple distilled was somehow understood as more quality.
Hmm.
Can,
Well,
can, can you say that? Like it was a
no.
marketing slogan at some point. Triple distilled vodka. No? You don't go Usually
I
considered
do
fluid.
not
You know
recall ever
that?
hearing that.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, I
mean,
mean, I've certainly seen distilled 7 times, but triple distilled seems like, yeah, we just couldn't afford to distill our vodka more than that. Or it's somebody saying we wanted to have some flavor in our vodka, but I would guess that's illegal because the legal definition of vodka
it's
is
99. It's the purest
it's
expression of
flavorless.
ethanol and water. Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, like what I'm saying is it's because I've seen this comment over and over again every time I we mention that it has been distilled just once. So some people think that somehow it's not a healthy practice.
Well,
Uh,
there were certainly some comments on smoked agave to that extent, yes.
yeah, yeah.
But
So
that was really somebody who just didn't understand
okay,
distillation.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Let's move on.
Okay.
Not that important.
Next up is Cinco Sentidos,
Pew, pew,
five
pew.
senses. So that is Jason Cox. He is he's a beanpole of a white lad from Indiana who's been living down in Oaxaca for like God, it's probably 5 years now, something like
No,
that.
more. He was there when I was still sort of new in the area. Maybe 7 years, 8 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, so Jason has this brand of uncertified agave spirits that he sources from the men and women who make them in the rural communities, and he serves them at his restaurant. And at some point, people got so excited about the spirits of the restaurant that there was demand to bring it up to the United States of America. And God bless him for doing that. He's bringing us beautiful spirits that you wouldn't get up here otherwise. So if you are drinking his spirits at Copal or from Copal in Santa Cruz, you have got his Sierra Negra that is made by
Super.
Alberto Martinez from Santa Catarinas, Alboradas. Now,
That's
if you happen to be at Mission Cantina in Seattle, then you are drinking the Popular Metal that is made by Amando Alvarez in Santa Maria Ixcatlan. Okay, so first up,
where
like,
do we start with this guy? Like these are so difficult to explain.
well, okay. Well, I don't think they're that difficult to explain.
They're wild. They both have wild. Okay, go try it. Try it, dude.
Okay,
I
so the
trust you.
first round, you had two spirits that were both made in Miahuatlan, and that were both made or milled using a Tahona, right? So a commonality here is so we're no longer in Miahuatlan. We're now actually heading north of Oaxaca Centro to get to these two different places. One is in the Sierra Norte, so that's going to be the Sierra Negra. That's Alberto Martinez, right? The other one is in Santa Maria Ixcatlan, which is going to be in the mountains at 8,000 feet, but it's not in the Sierra Norte. It's
Closer to Tehuacan, closer to Puebla.
there you go, closer to Puebla. But both spirits, both agaves, they were milled using wooden mallets.
Wait. But the Sierra Negra, do you see this tepeguaje bark added to the
Hey, 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 hey,
fermentation?
hey, hey,
Okay.
hey! I'm
Hey.
talking commonalities first.
Okay.
Commonalities.
Okay.
So we're north of Centro. We're using wooden mallets to mill, and we're distilling in wood-fired clay pot stills. Those are the commonalities. Now,
Okay.
Chava, would you like to talk about the differences?
The tepeguaje. Okay. So, uh, how do I? The first time I heard about barks being like tree barks being used in stuff was with bitters.
Hmm.
So again, I
Bitters
was
and tonic, and yeah.
yeah. So again, I was like 17 years old drinking, and the father of a good friend of mine was obsessed with cocktails. So what will be his guinea pigs, and he will prepare all his stuff, and he had all these different jars with tree barks, and he was doing his homemade bitters. And I was like, wow, that's a really funny thing. I had never thought about these two things connecting, tree barks and alcohol. And it seems that in this specific region, it is a very common practice to add this tree bark to the fermentation to, and this is where it gets extremely mysterious. And maybe you know these guys a little bit more than me. But what has been the explanation that they've given you to this practice, like adding this tree bark?
So my recollection of it is that the way that Jason explained it was that it's too cold there, and so it
Mm,
needs some help. The ferment needs some help in order to not die out, and the tree bark provides that help in the form of
nitrogen.
thank you, nitrogen. Is exactly right.
And that's wild. That's wild stuff.
It is wild. And so the other thing that I think is interesting is we're so used to talking about the open air wooden fermenters that are used at these palenques, the places where they make these spirits, and yet in this particular case, both of these places have different styles of fermenters, different from each other and different from that, right? So what Alberto's using to make his Sierra Negra is it's sort of like a cement, it's a like a tomb, like we talked about in Durango. It's almost like that tomb, but much bigger than we're used to seeing in Durango, and it's wood lined. So that's his fermentation vessel. And then what Mondo uses in Ixcatlan to make his papilo metal, it's a bullskin. It's a bullskin that's hanging from four logs to make this sack, and that's what they use.
And the oldest documented, documented use of of a skin to ferment stuff, my understanding is that it's linked to the Mongolians. So yeah, they used to ferment the milk. You know, they have a arak, how do
Eric.
you pronounce arak?
We call it
Yeah,
Arik. It's called Arik Torin, is what
arak,
that
sure.
curdled milk is Arik Torin.
So that, to my understanding, that's the first documented usage of skins of an animal for, I think, I don't know which animal they were using. The fact that a Mongolian practice can be found in the mountains of Oaxaca just absolutely blows my mind. And the distillation technology that I use there, you can find extremely similar examples in Korea, in Mongolia, in China. And
It's
I
just
always
not in the
like to,
Philippines.
in the Philippines too, but they
Okay.
call it yeah, well, with lambanog, but it's hard.
Yeah.
Contemporarily speaking, it's almost impossible to find in the Philippines. I tried. This madman put me into the mission of finding traditionally made lambanog. I ended up in cockfights and places where there
Did
was
you
no
win?
public.
Did you win?
I ate the rooster, but so
So,
well,
to the point of Amando's bullskin fermenters, right? Like I thought it would be really cool to bring one of those back to the USA to show people as an example.
what did the FDA said about
I don't know. I've not gotten it
that?
back yet. I just assumed, oh, bullskin. Like I'm thinking about leather jackets and stuff, figuring it's gonna be right. Oh, that'll be easy to fold up, and so he finally had one that was spent that he had to get rid of, and I bought it from him, but it was literally it was stiff. It was stiff as wood. There was just no doing anything with it. I couldn't.
Like fiberglass. It almost
Yes,
becomes
yeah,
fiberglass. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you'll hear people say, "Well, this is the way that they used to do fermentation because you could very quickly move your fermenter. You could collapse it and put it on your
Ah,
back and carry it with you." There's no freaking way that thing is collapsing. It's just not. It's not. After two uses, it is so
well,
solid.
but it weighs a lot less than a wooden tank.
You're still going to
Eh,
be like a giant
no, no,
turtle
no.
with yeah, it's
Yeah,
not going
but
to
you're
happen.
thinking like a gringo that packs all his stuff in a suitcase and then travels to Cancun for the weekend.
Yes, I am.
It didn't
Okay.
work like that. But
Okay.
anyway, Lou, whatever, whatever.
The other thing that I like to talk about when I'm talking about Amando, well, there's a bunch of things I like to talk about. This is the water project that we're working on, but you can go to the sacred.mx website if you want to know about the rain collection system we're setting up. It's the fact that Amando, he's actually Amandito because his father is named Amando, so he's little Amando, and
Yeah,
his
well,
father is big
it's
Amando.
like my father is Chava, it's the original Chava, and I am Chavita,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
yeah, that's why I need a beard, but it's not happening.
it's not.
Anyway,
But the other thing that I really love is, and this is, it's something I love about Amando, and it's something I love about Jason, right? So Jason is an importer and he's a brand owner, right? He's got, sorry, he's not an import. Yeah, he's in essence he's an importer, um, but he's a brand owner, and the brand is Cinco Sentidos. So he purchases his agave spirits, uncertified agave spirits, from his producers. Um, and Amando is one of his four original guys and is one of his biggest guys, right? Because everybody loves this stuff that was fermented in bullskin. Well, Amando says to Jason, "Hey, you know what? I think I want to start my own brand." and he wants to start his own brand. This is, the thing I love about Amando. He wants to start his own brand so that he can help to ensure the longevity of Ixcateco, which is what they call the spirit in his community. Right? So when you talk about tequila comes from tequila and raicilla, well, it doesn't come from a place called raicilla, but it's it's a name of an agave spirit in a specific place.
Pepe,
Yeah.
yeah. Vino, they call wine. They call
Yep.
mezcal wine in Durango. So it's tremendously confusing. You get to a party and they're like, "You want wine?" You're like, "Well, I would prefer mezcal, but sure, like serve me wine." And then they serve you agave spirits, and you're very happy. Anyway,
So Amando wants to start this brand called Ixcateco, where he is bottling the uncertified agave spirits that he makes, that his father makes, that his cousins make, that some of his other neighbors make, that the people make in this community of 500 people called Ixcatlan. Um, so Jason, not only does Jason not get offended that he's losing one of his producers, he helps him set it up. He's helping him
well,
set up his brand. He's
because
connecting
that's
them to importers.
and that's the right thing to do because I come from an industrial design background and I find it so crazy annoying that 10 years ago, a lot of industrial designers, when the artisanal boom was happening in Mexico, will get to artisans and be like, hey, I'm going to connect you to the world. And when the artisan was like, okay, now I'm connected to the world, I do amazing stuff that nobody else can do. I want to sell it myself. The industrial designers will get all nervous about it, offended. I opened your eyes to the bigger world. And you're like, no, no, they opened your eyes to the
Yeah.
bigger world. And then you just did a little bit of work of putting the makeup so people would understand it. So I think that's definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah. So if you go to ixcateco.com, that's ixcateco.com, ixcateco.com, you'll be able to see the beginnings of Amando's brand. And in fact, if you go to sacred.mx and you look under projects, you'll see Agave Futures. You can actually purchase agave spirits directly from Amando and his family and neighbors and friends. Um, and then go like you can pay them now directly through PayPal, and then you just pick up those bottles when you're able to get down to Oaxaca safely.
Okay. I just want a fine point. You said he was one of the biggest producers connected to Cinco Sentidos. And I think
Okay, okay, that's fair. He's
okay,
only about
and
5'2". That is very true.
no.
No?
How many liters a year do you think he produces?
Oh, that's a really good question. When I first met him back in, God, I think it was like 2015. When I first met him, he said he never wanted to produce more than 1,000 liters a year, and I
Okay,
think he's
wait.
maybe up to 1,500 liters a year now.
Okay, so that's smaller than the smallest Macallan steel.
Right,
The
right,
smallest Macallan steel is 2,400 liters. So this guy a year is producing like final product.
right.
They're filling this Macallan steel with that amount of must, just like all kinds of stuff, and then probably their
What does a
white
bottle of
dot.
Macallan cost?
I believe the 12. If you go to Walmart, a very reputable supplier of alcohol,
Yeah,
if you're in an urgency, at least in Mexico, it's about $60.
60,
60, yeah.
and they produce how much out of one still?
Oh no, these guys. I think I saw numbers, and it's like, I mean, I'm. Yeah, no emergencies worth Walmart. I absolutely agree, but you do not live in Mexico. I tell you, in Mexico, the Oxxos and the Walmart, sometimes, but
But the point is just simply like right now we're living in a time when people figure out what this stuff is, how it's made, how special and rare and unique it is. The price is gonna go through the roof. So
you're buying real estate in Queens 45 years ago.
yeah, exactly that. Okay, next round. Are we on to the next round?
Yes. Sorry, I think I got a little bit too
No, you don't
excited
have
in
to
this one.
apologize. This is
No,
good. We're doing fine on time. I was worried we were so slow on that first round, and now we can slow down a bit, which
we're
is perfect
cruising.
because we just got to Rezpiral, which is run by Alex White, who's a hippie. All he does is slow down.
I
All that
love,
guy
I
does
love.
is slow down.
We once tried to interview Alex White for our podcast, and I don't want to say it was a failure, but it was it was it was not some. We haven't been able to use it just because it was.
We'll figure out a way at some point. We'll
It
figure out a way.
was just a little bit too confusing, I think. Well, like, I don't know. So
Well, here's the
he,
thing about Alex, right? Like Alex is an artist, and some people who claim that they're artists and that their lines are art projects, really they're just con artists. But with Alex, Alex is an honest to God artist. He when he first started bringing the line in, like he's, oh, I love this stuff. I'm gonna become a brand owner and bring this to places across the USA. Like his initial idea was I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think he brought in 12 expressions and he starts knocking on doors. I've got these 12 agave spirits. Are you interested? And they're like, yeah, which three should I try? I said, no, no, no. You should try all 12 of them. They're beautiful. Each one is distinct. Yeah, but I don't have space for anything but one. So tell me which three I should try, and then I'll pick the one I like. But no, you need all 12 of them. That is Alex. And
oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
you had to pay him cash, right? Too.
No, 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 no. He was doing all of this legally. This is
Okay.
no,
Oh.
no, 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 no. Completely legal. And
Oh.
so the thing I love about Alex is every time he seems to come close to making money, he finds a way to spend it on the producers. He's like this guy, he can't afford new clothes. His dog is eating his leftovers because he gives all of his money to these producers from whom he purchases his agave spirits. He has he's the only guy I know, in fact, who has a profit sharing plan for everybody that he buys from, and and so literally every profit he makes, I can't remember if it's like 10%, 20%, but they just get this big check at the end that they didn't expect. Um,
That's awesome.
and on top of that, he'll go to their their palenques, he'll collect their seeds, and then he built a nursery where he hired an employee so that he can then nurture their seeds into seedlings, which he then gives back to them so that they can plant it. I love Alex White. I love Alex White.
And he has great stuff. I'm always very happy to try his. I think a lot of his labels are written by hand, or they like.
That's another thing. You can't read the labels. It's like it's meant to be obtuse. Oh, you've got to really want this if you're gonna get it.
But
You
you
got
really want it. That's the important part. You
you
really
do.
want it, so you make all the effort. You do make all the effort.
Yeah. So okay, so the folks who are in Seattle who purchased their sets from Mission Cantina, what you've got, what you've got is the Mexicano Jabali Ensemble that was made by Abel Martinez in Santo Domingo, Alvarado. Now we just talked about a different Alvarado, right, with our friend Jason Cox.
Santa
The two
Catarina,
towns are
Santo Domingo.
about like 30 minutes apart, I think, is my recollection.
Mm.
Abel Martinez, Santo Domingo Alvarado's, and then the folks at Copal, and I'm sure I'm going to get a little private note again, but the folks of Copal, you've got a Rezpiral that's an ensemble also, but it's made by Apollonio. Now, I don't know, as far as I can tell, there are three different ensembles
Harkens vintage machine.
that Apollonio makes with Simeon Ramirez. Oh no, there's two. I'm sorry. One is an Arauqueño Espadín Tobaziche blend. The other is a Barril Espadín Tepestate blend.
Do you think it's worth just quickly mentioning what an ensemble is?
Well, I think that's the whole point, right? Because both of
Oh,
these are ensembles. So jump on that horse, Chava.
actually, did I tell you I went into a rabbit hole of wine research when we got interviewed by wine enthusiasts because I wanted to, like if there was
You
going
wanted
to
to be
be a fight,
ready.
yeah, like if there's a fight, you'd rather have the right gloves on. So I was just like, I went through a lot of stuff. And one of the hottest topics in the wine context, it's called field blends.
When you say hot
So
topic, you don't mean it's debated. You mean it's the thing people are looking for.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the super alternative. I believe it is very Vienna intensive. So
Hmm.
in Austria, it seems like Vienna is one of the few major cities in Europe where they do a lot of wine. So I mean, there's a whole thing to it. But turns out these people were like, oh, back in the day, you wouldn't just plant acres and acres of Pinot Noir. You will have different grapes in one plot of land, and then when they will are ready, you will harvest them all, and you will make this beautiful, super sophisticated wines with all the information of these different wines. Okay, so because that's how wine people approach
Yeah.
this. But basically, basically, you have a lot of different agave species, and a lot of them they get to maturity at different times. So back in the day when espadín, it's like, do you think using the pulque analogy is going to work, or people don't have the least idea of what pulque is? Okay, so
You don't need to. I mean, the pertinent point here is different agaves reach maturity at different times. Nobody was waiting for enough Araucano to reach maturity to make a batch of Araucano, right? You harvest what's available,
you
and
were selling mezcal. You were selling mezcal. It didn't say
yeah,
anything but mezcal on the bottle.
right, exactly. So you're going to cook all those agave. In these cases, you're going to cook all the agave together, you're going to mill them together, ferment them together, and then the ferment that comes out of that gets distilled. So everything started from the beginning, together from the beginning. Now, you will see places where that's not the tradition. The tradition instead is that you distill each agave separately and then you blend afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, I actually just want to make a fine point because it seemed like I was mocking the field blends of wine, and I'm not. I think they're a beautiful concept. I just, it's sometimes like it's like if wine invented everything. That's the only part that I find slightly annoying. It's like
Yes, this is why I hate grapes.
well, until wine does it, it doesn't have the authority to be worthwhile in other contexts. That's the only thing that sometimes gets me a little bit heated. So, but I love the idea. Yeah. We're talking about mezcal.
Well, the truth is, so the question that Tina's asking, it's the right question, is are we talking about ensembles versus mezclas? And the truth, Tina, is that you, I think the definition that the CRM uses for ensemble,
CRM being the certification body for mezcal.
thank you for that. Um, uh, Actually, you know what? They don't have a definition because I know two different styles that both call themselves ensemble. So there is no actual definition. No, so there's a cold blend, right, which is distill separately, then blend it together, and then there's that idea of blending from the start. And in some communities, in fact, you call it a mezcla if you blended from the start. You call it an ensemble if you're blending as a cold blend afterwards. Though I think most of us mezcal geeks learned the opposite way. But the truth is, this is not a particular. These two terms don't actually
Have a
have.
regulation.
Yeah, and it's not even like a traditional. They don't have traditional meanings. The same from one community to the next.
The one trick that I can give you to get people really annoyed and angry at you at a party, if they serve you two mezcals that you hate, you tell them that you're going to do an ensemble and throw them in. You're going to be kicked out of that party. I assure you that.
Yeah. So okay, so let's talk about the specific people here, right? Now, at Copal, the
Julio Mate.
Apolonio Ramirez and Simeon Ramirez spirit, right, that you're drinking, that ensemble, is made in San Agustin Amatengo. Now, how we talked about that refrescador when we were down in Miahualan, that's what they're using here as well. And Amatengo is close enough to Ahutla that it's kind of considered the same region. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think actually that's a really interesting. Yeah, CRM was customer relationship manager. That's why we need to make these fine points. Yeah, I use big fan of CRM. Use a Soho one, Indian design, great stuff.
Okay,
Uh,
keep going.
Now, I think that okay, this is going to be an almost difficult concept too, but in Mexico, there's different types of borders. I think all over the planet, but in Mexico, it's very clear. For example, we talk about La Mixteca. La Mixteca takes or touches many different states around Mexico, but it's a region that shares certain cultural affinities, uh, environmental characteristics, traditions, and stuff. So we recognize it as a piece of land beyond its political boundaries. So a lot of these things, and maybe we need
Like
to
kind of like if we were in the USA and we were out on the East Coast, we might talk about Appalachia.
exactly, exactly
Ah,
that.
ah.
So I think a lot of, and maybe we need, a twofold map, like one map on top of the other. When we talk about a place where something comes from, it is its actual political borders, and then you say Jutla or Santo Domingo Alvarado, so na, and then to talk about the region that it's informed by the environment, the traditions, the type of people, the languages, like its cultural background. So that's why sometimes if you see us struggling a lot trying to pinpoint the spaces where these things are made, it's almost the same discussion as agaves.
Right.
Their scientific names and the regional names, as Tina said, as clear as mud, always, all the time.
Yep, yep, yep. So, so Apollonio and Simeon use the same tools as the folks down in Miahuatlan, though I don't honestly know what kind of beast is pulling their Tahona. Um, and then if we go off to Abel Martinez in Santo Domingo, Albarradas, he's using that same earthen oven. He's using a Tahona that's pulled by a horse. We've got beautiful horses there. The wooden fermenter, open air wooden fermenter. Oh, and there was a question I think Tina had asked, which is what kind of wood was used to make the fermenter. And Tina, you'd suggested that everybody was using cypress at the other places, and I don't. That
What is
seems weird to
cypress in
me.
Spanish?
I don't know, but
Cypress. I don't think that's.
I always think of the wooden fermenters as being pine.
Uh, that's yeah. It's usually pine. The problem, it has to be super dry pine.
Yeah,
That's the caveat in uh,
random stuff
yeah.
online. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. It has to be extremely dry pine, extremely dense, like old pine. If you use young, wet pine, it's gonna get all crooked like crazy. I believe that in some government program that gave a lot of fermenters to a lot of people, they used like low quality, young, not very well dried pine, and their fermenters were, an contemporary art installation within days. So that's my understanding. Sometimes they use oak and sino, but I don't think that what you call oak is what we call oak in Mexico. I think they're different species.
Huh.
Not
Okay.
absolutely certain about
But
that.
so wooden fermenter, and then he's using a wood-fired copper pot still, and he's distilling it twice. The first time that I met Abel, actually, coincidentally, was when I was traveling with Jason Cox from Cinco Sentidos, and it was funny. Jason and I every year will take a trip. Well, every year that there's not a pandemic, we'll take a trip together, just driving off on the Agave Road Trip into the middle of nowhere, and we got really good at it. And for some reason, that particular year, like we're used to each other's chaotic driving. We both like to drive really fast over really awful
It
roads.
is a pain to be in the car with you, Lou. I mean, at least I feel safe, but it is an absolute pain to be in a car with you.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. And I love you even more for putting up with it. So that particular year as we were driving to meet Abel, I got he's gonna be so pissed I'm telling this story. I got Jason car sick. I had to pull over and he threw up outside the car. And then we were just
Boo.
a little bit away from Abel's place and he drove the rest of the way and then he said I gotta take a nap and he slept for like 4 or 5 hours, and nobody in that town spoke English, and I'm just literally walking around the whole town with Abel, and he's pointing to things that he thinks I should see. Look at that, that's a house. Look at that, that's a dog. It was a great time. It was a
But
great
was he
time.
pointing back at you when people cross by? Like when
That's a gringo.
I get
That's a gringo.
that.
And then, so after that leg of the trip, we went on. We were headed down to La Chirogue.
La Chiroga.
Yeah, where Tosba is. And he got me car sick on the way there, and but like at least that was at night. So, I went to bed early and I was fine the next morning. But yeah, anyway, I don't. That's that's an anecdote that had nothing to do with this tasting. I just really wanted to talk about vomiting while you people are drinking. That seems fair, Lou. Bad.
Yeah,
I'm a bad host.
terrible, but it's fine. You've done worse things, actually. I'm actually proud of you slightly. You haven't mentioned other stuff that usually is a little bit more
You all
embarrassing.
don't
And do
encourage.
not, and do not. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's move to the next one, kiddo.
Okay, so
Tachito.
this next round is from Neta, which I just found out. Like, how did I not know this? But Ben Scott imports Neta now.
Yeah, through mixtape, through Agave mixtape.
No, no, no. He's their importer for the whole brand.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I said. How? Like, I've known Ben forever. Benjamin J. Scott. He owns a mansion and a yacht. How did I not know that?
yeah, I actually, there's a few brands that I've never really tried a lot, and just because out of chance. I think you had this phenomenon happen to you, Lou. When you see a very pretty bottle, you suspect it. You like it.
Yes.
You
You
approach
assume,
it.
right? You think
They,
if the
they spend
bottle's
their
that
money in
beautiful,
marketing. Yeah, they
yeah.
didn't. So that for like Neta was too cool for like it's still too cool for me. Like that's what the cool kids in Mexico
What
City
does that
drink.
name mean, in fact? Neta.
Neta, actually, I'm not a big fan of the name. Neta means like it's. You know what fresa means in Spanish? Fresa,
It
like
means strawberry.
strawberry, but it's like a posh kid. So
Oh.
it's like when you're now the like it's like a Bali girl like. So when you're talking to a fresa, a posh person in Mexico, it's a very common. It's that like it's the equivalent of like of a Bali girl sort of.
Really?
So yeah, along those lines, so they use
Oh,
neta, but it also means truth. So it's asking for the truth. They're constantly asking if what you said to them was really what you told them, and you tell
gotcha.
them yes,
Oh, I
neta,
really regret
yes.
asking that now. Oh,
Yeah, that was the other part of it that made me. But it's also something. It's slang and could probably in another context be used better. Maybe I'm just. That's my experience with the word. Maybe some other people have better experiences with this word, and I would love to hear about it.
okay. So anyway, if you are in Santa Cruz and you got your set from Copal, you are drinking a bequiche. Now, I don't know which bequiche because, in fact, they source bequiche, which is the most common agave in this particular community within Miahuatlan that you can find. So
Really?
they have five
That's
different,
crazy.
huh?
That's crazy. I didn't know, like that. That's
Right?
okay.
Stick with
Yeah.
me. I'll teach you plenty.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Please.
there are at least five different producers from whom they source bequiche, and one of them is a woman. I don't know which one you guys got, but the thing that I started to dive. This is my rabbit hole, right? Like what distinguishes them. Every one of them is made the exact same way, which I guess makes sense since they're from the same community within Miahuatlan, where they're using the earthen oven. They're milling first using a machete to chop it into tiny pieces, and then letting a machine, like a wood chipper, finish off that milling. Then open their fermentation in the wooden barrel, and then distilling twice, even though this is Miahuatlan, there's no refrescadors here, distilling twice in a copper pot still from batches from the size of 60 liters up to 400 liters,
Yeah.
and
That
is
that's.
beautiful.
Uh, and
Yeah.
the Kush is one of my favorites. And I mean, just to finish a little bit of that, I will never get close to Neta because it was too cool for me. But then the other day, not so long ago, I had the chance to drink something out of them, and I was blown away. I was like, wow! Like sometimes,
Yeah,
things.
they've got a beautiful little hidden tasting room in Oaxaca that
You
I
see,
didn't
too
know.
cool for me. Too cool for me. Like nobody invites me to this stuff.
You didn't know, right? I didn't know. It was
Yeah.
like the last time I was in Oaxaca in February of last year. It's the only time I've been to the tasting room because I didn't know it existed before that.
There you go.
You should reach, like, if you're headed down to Oaxaca, after you get your vaccinations and blah 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 blah, definitely reach out to them because they've got this beautiful little room full of beautiful little bottles.
Yeah,
Oh, and
and
so and
invite me because I want to be cool too.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and then if you're at Mission Cantina, or if you're in Seattle, I guess, and you got your set from Mission Cantina, the neta that you got was the Espadín from Candido Garcia Cruz, and this is made in the exact same way that I described the other neta spirit, because again, same community. The difference here, this I think is actually, it's funny. This I think is the largest batch in the whole bunch that we drank today. This is 900 liters. 900 liters. That's like a minute at the Bacardi plant, right?
No, maybe 2 seconds
2 seconds. There you go.
or less. Yeah, maybe, like in the second range.
Yeah,
Uh, from 2 years though, they're saying.
from 2 years. I
Yeah,
don't even know what that.
they made 900 liters in 2 years.
Oh, and they blended them. Is that
I'm
what you're
not
saying,
sure.
Tina? That this is too. This is too. Oh my God! It's too. So there you go. There's your ensemble. Like, does this qualify as an ensemble? If it's two Espadine, God, that's amazing. Two Espadine batches made by the same people, the same way. Thank you for the boom, Tina. So like it's a cold blend ensemble or mezcla. Man, that's
You,
crazy.
you know what's my next experiment after we're finished with this tasting? I have something from
Just try. Is there,
2007.
would the experiment be trying to do a podcast with somebody who knows something? Is that the
No,
experiment you're going to try?
no, I keep complaining to everybody about you, but so that checks it off.
Okay.
But I have something from 2007 and 2009 from Guerrero, so I'm gonna try to blend them and see what happens. Because
Oh,
I have never thought about this different year blending. That just opens a whole different other area of play.
that's funny. When I first started coming down to Oaxaca and I'd come back, I was buying stuff from Marco Ochoa, right? And I
Marco
fell in.
Ochoa, Marcos Ochoa. You said Marco Ochoa.
I said Marco Ochoa. What did I say wrong?
It just sounded like something else, but it's fine.
Okay,
It's fine.
okay.
It's okay.
Anyway, so I loved a bunch of the things he was selling to me, and I can't remember honestly what it was that first like just rang my bell, but I think it would have been like a Victor Ramos. I'm gonna say Victor Ramos Tobola just because it's one of my big bells now. But like I really liked it. I brought it home, and then the next time I went down, I got some more, and I can remember pouring it like blending the two bottles, just thinking, well, it's the same thing. It's not a big deal. Like I took me years to figure this stuff out, even as I was flying down there and experiencing it.
And
And if it was from Marco, and it was, that was 2010, right? Like that was I was already 5 years into it.
okay. So actually, I want to take the opportunity to talk about this vintage in wines. If you're buying something that it's 13-year-old, like vintage from a reputable wine producer, you're paying serious amounts of money. Here, you can have a 13-year-old aged in glass or matured in glass spirit for $50. It's
Right,
insane. It's
right,
crazy.
right.
So yeah, and we don't know the science behind this. I need someone to win a big grant and do the proper studies, but it changes
You wouldn't have
drastically.
time now. You no longer have time for that. Somebody's going to finally come to you with the grant. And you're going to be like, I'm sorry. I'm taking pictures for Ben Scott. I don't have time.
It's because I used to design that was my last life a few years ago. I used to do science for a living. Now this is that story actually. They caught all the funding for science and research in Mexico in the government, but that's a whole different story. And we haven't had funds for research in science in 2 years now. It's crazy.
Really? Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
True sad story. But anyways, something else you want to add? Shall we ask for questions? I think it's the right moment to ask for questions.
Well,
We talked
if
like
you've got any
crazy.
questions, now's the time because we're in the last 18 minutes of week 5, which means we're done. We're done after this.
For the winter cup. It's still
I don't think
cold
we're
in
gonna.
America. It's the end of the winter cup. It's still cold where you are from, no? Do you have
Not in Santa
snow?
Cruz. Santa Cruz is fine.
Yeah, but you have snow in Chicago,
Sorry, David.
no?
Yeah, most of it's melted now.
Really? I had 28 Celsius in Mexico City today. That's insane.
I don't. What does that have to do with anything except rubbing my nose in something? So I think we call this a wrap. right?
If there's
We,
no questions, if there's no
there's
questions.
just a boo. Dave gave us a boo. I think we call it a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for participating and watching. We're going to be doing some, I don't know when we're going to be doing the next bunch of these, but we'll be doing a bunch of these. And in the meantime, check out our
Wait.
podcast.
And also, okay, yeah, we have a podcast called Agave Road Trip where we explore a lot of the questions that fascinate us. It's usually an unclear, muddy answer, but something cool with, I think the only cool thing that we've done in a long time actually, the tasting box. I think the tasting box is not
Oh
bad.
yeah, we got a tasting box. Oh, that's our next
So,
thing too, isn't it? In April we're doing a tasting.
yes,
So
yes,
if
yes,
you
please,
yeah.
please. Use your commercial voice, Lou. Do that.
Okay, so if the crazy Tolbert. Okay, so if you
Thanks,
want
Chris.
to go on an agave road trip right now, but you can't go on an agave road trip because you are not vaccinated, and even if you are vaccinated, rural Mexico isn't vaccinated. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna buy agave road trip in a box. How do they do that?
They go to agavefestival.org.
Org.
Org.
Right. And you're going to get these 10 little 50 milliliter bottles. It's like $90 plus shipping. And you get 10 little 50 milliliter bottles that really comprise 5 flights of 2 spirits each. And each flight illustrates some different aspect of agave spirits, heritage agave spirits, or uh, Mexican spirits, because there is a flight that's so tall that we absolutely love. And
Yeah,
you can watch on our YouTube page, which you can find at mezcal.video or tequila.video or
but but but
pulque.video.
but
What?
you know something you never mentioned that I think
What?
is the ultimate selling point of why the tasting box rocks, because it's impossible to get most of these things in the commercial market, not only in the US but also in
That's
Mexico.
that's
Like
true.
when
That's
we
true. Everything in there is non-commercial, tiny little batches, blah blah blah.
impossible.
People you've never
Wait,
heard
wait.
of.
And not only impossible because it's like small batches, small producers, but it's also stuff that they usually don't sell to people. It's
That's
stuff
right.
that
They
they
only sell it to dogs. So unless you've got a really good dog costume and you can find your way to
no
these
look.
really no,
No, they sold it to us because we were insistent and annoying, and they ultimately said, "Okay, I'm going to sell you this thing that's going to make a mess to my production, but here, have this."
there you go. So it's that. So yeah, if you want that, go to agavefestival.org. And then if you want to watch the videos where we walk you through the tasting, you can go to mezcal.video or tequila.video or raicilla.video or bacanora.video or agave.video. We've got them
And
all. We've got all the dot videos.
how much money you spend a year in URLs?
Oh, I'm sure I'm up to 2 grand now. It's got to be two
A
grand.
year.
Yeah.
We'll talk. We'll talk after this done.
Okay, people. Thank you very much. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Gracias, Tina. Thanks to everybody. Adiosito. Mucha suerte.